Welcome to the Veterinary Marketing Podcast, where it's all about how to attract, engage, and retain clients to your veterinary hospital using digital marketing. My name is Brandon Brashears. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. Today's episode, we have a special guest. We have Rhonda from dogdaysconsulting.com. We talk all about branding. It is full of tons of value. We'll get into that in just a second. Before we begin, I want to mention just a couple things. First, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe in iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get your podcast from. If there's anything you ever need help with or you want some topics covered too, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can always send me an email at brandon@veterinarmarketingpodcast.com. I'd also like to mention this episode is being sponsored by two websites by Brad Haven. We have usedvetequipment.com and newvetequipment.com. For over 9 years now, usedvetequipment.com has been helping vets buy and sell equipment. You can save money when you buy used equipment, everything from cages, kennels, pumps, x-ray equipment, lasers, ultrasounds, dental equipment, surgery equipment, lab equipment from Abaxis, IDEX, and Heska, tables, tubs, and sinks, vet trucks, and vet boxes. What do you have to sell? At usedvetequipment.com, they bring the buyer and seller together. Also, if you're looking for new veterinary equipment with amazing warranties, head on over to newvetequipment.com. They show you the price up front. They've got great dental x-ray equipment, digital x-ray equipment, ultrasound equipment, LED surgery lighting, surgery tables, autoclaves. At newvetequipment.com, you clearly see the prices on every item for sale. You'll also be able to check out the warranty so that you can buy without regret. At newvetequipment.com, they show you the price and give you a great warranty. All right, so let's jump into today's episode. We are so lucky to have Rhonda as a guest. Rhonda founded Dog Days Consulting in 2017. She is a CVPM, which is awesome, a certified compassion fatigue professional, and a certified professional life coach with over 15 years of veterinary management experience, which is awesome. The things that we talk about today are, I think, really valuable when it comes to how to position your practice, your brand. And we also dive into some more kind of difficult things as far as how to build a brand if you're an employee or if you should have employees that build brands, how you should handle difficult topics around that. And I think it's just a really very practical, useful, and valuable episode for you. So this is something you're definitely going to want to listen to the whole way through and also save for future listening to refer back. So without further ado, here's my episode with Rhonda. All right, so today's guest, we have Rhonda Belle. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, Rhonda. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us. I've wanted to have you on for a long time, so I am glad to have you here finally. So for people who don't know you, can you kind of give us a background of how you got started and your background in marketing in the veterinary space?
I have the most convoluted process of how I got there. I started out in a practice just as an assistant and kind of grew up in veterinary medicine, got my CVPM and was managing practices and really felt like I had kind of hit my stride. I love it. I love business and building businesses and I'm building veterinary businesses. I mean, there's just nothing better than that. And I got to see puppies and kittens. So it was like I was in my zone. Then I got sick and had a heart attack in 2016. And it later led to a diagnosis of an autoimmune disease. And so getting diagnosed with scleroderma and starting the process of all the medications and all the treatments, I'm on a lot of immune suppressants. So I have a team of specialists working with me. And I was in California at the time. My husband's a retired Marine and we were stationed out there then. And my specialist came back and said, you can work, not a problem. You'll be able to eventually work full time again. But I was recovering from that heart attack and not feeling well, very weak. They said, but there are going to be a few limitations and we need to go over those. So we went over them and basically it was, you can't be around people and you can't be around animals. Because I'm on immune suppressants. I'm like, I was running 2 veterinary hospitals, team of 30, all the clients, all the things. In fact, whenever I was in the hospital and they were testing me for all this stuff, they ran every zoonotic panel they could find because it was just so rare and so bizarre that had happened. And the truth of it is I just wore myself down. I absolutely ran myself into the ground, 12-hour days, 10-hour days, 16-hour days, whatever I needed. If I was a tech for the day, if someone called out, I mean, it's the normal story. And I did that to myself and it's very eye-opening. And I wish I was capable of learning lessons pre instead of post. So I talk about it a lot now post. So hopefully I can catch somebody pre and not have them go through what I'm going through. I am permanently disabled now. But in my world, I call it other abled, because it just kind of made me think in a different way about how I would be productive in what I would do for veterinary medicine and for my career and to make money and for my family and, all the things. I was really used to eating and paying bills, and I kind of wanted to help my husband keep doing that. So about 6 months after my heart attack, give or take, I actually don't remember when it was exactly the heart attack was. I know it was the end of 2016, so around September or October. By January, I had filed for my formation documents for my business because I knew there was going to be something else. I just didn't know what that looked like yet. I thought I was going to be a management consultant and that I could do that from home. It morphed into marketing and helping practices with their social media on a small scale. And then that grew.
That's amazing.
So I went to school. I got some formal training because I was doing what I knew to do. And then I decided I wanted to know more. So I went back and I got a lot more certifications after getting sick than I ever had before I got sick. So just found a new way.
That's super amazing. That's actually one of the reasons. Kind of nothing happened to me, but my son was born premature, and I was doing marketing and also real estate was my primary business. And so he was born at 27 weeks. My wife was in the hospital for a month, and so I had to take care of my kids. I couldn't drive around and show houses, and plus he was immune compromised for first 2 years too because of being born, and so I had to be like, okay, I got to change it up. Can't be going around people all the time and can't be driving all over. So that's really interesting. It makes you get going for sure.
It does, but it makes you think about things in a different way. And the beautiful thing is, look at all the opportunities we have to recreate ourselves, recreate our environment, recreate our businesses, our income streams. I mean, I was the side hustle maven for a while and still kind of am. I have lots of sources of income instead of just one employer at a veterinary practice, because you just can't always count on that. And digital marketing and branding, the branding has been huge. Because if I didn't put myself out there for so long, because I couldn't physically go out there, I had to start telling people who I was and what I stood for and what I was trying to accomplish online. And that's hard because you got to talk about yourself. You got to brag. You got to really get out of that comfort zone. And it was so painful. And it was so slow in the beginning because I really was resistant to that part of the branding conversation. But once you kind of study it, talk to other people, find mentors, find other people like you that are into it and just have bits of information. I have bits of information. You kind of collect all of those things and you form a sense of education and a sense of experience. And then you can kind of go from there. And it's pretty helpful, but it's a little lonely in the beginning.
Definitely. Well, I'm so glad that you brought up branding. And I think that's a perfect tie-in because I definitely feel like I'm not an expert in branding by any means. My favorite thing is direct response marketing. It's like there's the two, the empire and the resistance, so to speak, of marketing. Not that they're adversarial, but like they're just. I'm always on the side of direct response, right? To the, I think, expense of branding. And branding is so incredibly important. And I don't give it enough time or, especially in the podcast, I'm always thinking in terms of direct response. So that's why I'm so glad I have you here. And so with branding, and that's such a general term, I like how you described it. In general, what would you say that branding is in terms of a veterinary hospital? I think you obviously just described it, but how would you describe it for a veterinary hospital? For a
veterinary hospital, it's the only thing that is kind of like the tangible personality. You can look at a practice, you can feel it, you can see it in action. Sometimes you can smell it.
You see the picture and you can smell what the reception looks like for sure.
Or you just look around and you're like, oh my God, that's gonna stink like dog. Like,
totally.
It's good and bad, but it's the package. You can hear it. You can hear how your team sounds, and clients when they walk in, what is that overall picture that they get of all of their senses when it's put together in a package? That's your brand. Then you take all of that information and what you think it is, what your client thinks it is, maybe something different. What you think it is, you package it, put it out there on social media. You try to share that. The problem that we run into is when we're not realistic about who we are, and we're not authentic, and we're not telling the truth about our practice, and we're trying to filter the pictures or only show the one clean corner in the practice, and that's the only place we ever take pictures because it looks good. Your clients know that. And so there's going to be that sense of inauthenticity and disconnect. So I think that to answer it, and I got really wordy, but to answer it, it is a tangible personality of a business.
Totally makes sense. And with that and branding, how do you think people should approach this from, like, let's say somebody's just been posting pictures without any like specific strategy behind branding. How do you think people should get started in coming up with the brand? And obviously, I think that it's probably something that they should get help with if they're serious about it. But if they're just trying to figure out who they are, what they're about, what are some practical ways that they can do that? And I think people are also kind of afraid in general because they have insecurities about, whatever it is they have insecurities about. So what are some practical tips in your opinion?
Well, in terms of creating a system, and this is something that I actually present about quite a bit because I'm all about DIY. I'm all about cheap and easy. I was a practice manager. I had $0 as a marketing budget. Like that's, you just had to make things happen. So in terms of starting a brand or managing a brand or coming up with ideas, I would start with a team meeting. I would get everyone that would be a part of it. But, for me, it would have been my entire practice. Get a team meeting together and say, okay, look, this is what we're going to focus on. We are going to do this grassroots. It's going to be DIY. Everyone needs to participate and help. I want everybody's creativity, their vision, their passion for the practice. Let's talk about who we are as a practice and identify ourselves. Let's write it down on a board. Who are we? What do we describe ourselves as? What do we want to be known for? Then from there, what do we want our clients to know about us? And what education pieces do we want our clients to know? Now let's put all that together and let's plan it out for January. Then let's plan it out for February. But always go back to that list of who are we? What is our personality? Who are we? And is the stuff that we're putting out there lining up with who we are? That's your checks and balances. It's your starting point. So you can, but you shouldn't really create a social media strategy until you've identified who you are. That way you can always measure up to yourself. And if you're not measuring up to yourself and the standards you've set, then you need to stop hitting enter, stop posting, and go back and look at that brand again.
That makes a lot of sense. When I'm doing like creating ads for clients or something, if we have a specific USP or target or real point that we want to convey, we just, write out who we're for or what we are for and what we are against. So that, like having both sides of that so that we can convey that in the ad copy makes the writing of that so much easier. When you say who you are, what are some of the things that you really think are important to include in that kind of a statement of like who somebody is? What does that mean to somebody, in your opinion, for vet practice?
Well, you have to know like you said, you have to know who your target audience is, and that's going to be your end user, your client. Now, our patient is the one who receives the care. So they're ultimately the end user, but the client's the end user decision maker, right? Mm-hmm. So they're the ones that we have to really target and think about. So what's going to be important to them? Well, seeing us, knowing what we're doing behind the walls and behind the doors. So showing the compassion, showing the care. They also want to have the education pieces. They don't want to go in feeling stupid or blind. They also want to know how to do business with you. I can't tell you how many clinics that I consult with and work with that when we first have this conversation, they're really hard to do business with. And unfortunately, and I love apps, I love technology, got a virtual business, I use it all. But with the advent of apps and with the increase in all the technology available to veterinary practices, we're putting up some barriers that we are not countering in other ways. And we have a brand, we have a social media presence, we can be countering those communication barriers. Sometimes I just don't see it happening. And so there's more blocks and issues with clients and communication breakdowns because we are not connecting with them enough because we've got kind of some technology in the way. So we've got to find ways around that and to work around that. I want to keep technology. I think it's a valuable tool, but that means you got to just communicate, work around that. On-hold messaging is a great way to do that because you can still have that personal messaging and people hear your voice, people hear your education pieces, all of that stuff, and still using technology that's going to suit them. So I think that's some of it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I totally agree. I'm on a bunch of email lists for different practices, and I got lots of email lists over the weekend, and it was about all kinds of promotions and specials and offers and stuff. But there was like no phone number or actually any way to do business with them. It's like I have to go and Google search their practice. But so I think that's a really good point. And another thing that you said that I thought was very valuable was showing people instead of just telling them or writing it down. What obviously social media is a great tool for that, but what are some of your favorite ways to show people what your brand is about versus just like, I think a lot of practices probably just assume that everybody knows who they are and what they're about. So how are some practical ways to actually show people?
I've seen it done a few ways. Some of the ones that I think are the most well received and that I kind of search out. Now, I have to tell you my bias and my algorithm bias, because I'm sure, as you know, all the searching you do, then you start being fed that stuff. So you really have to break out of some of the traps you get stuck in. But some of the types of content that I've seen that have done really well are the lighthearted fun. So not necessarily the serious, let's talk about heartworm disease like it's a college lecture. Mm-hmm. It's the lighthearted fun side of what we do in veterinary medicine without going to the, not professional. Just the dancing, the fun, the explaining, the allowing your doctors to show their personalities, or your technicians. If you've got a superstar technician who's great on camera and just could talk up a storm, put them in front of the camera. Let them talk about some of the things that are going on in their world and with your pet. And so they'll see that connection, and clients love to see their pets being highlighted and loved on. And it just shows everybody that we're not just pretending. Like, we're not just slamming them in cages and, sticking them with needles and doing all these mean, horrible things that they, for whatever reason, envision happens. Mm-hmm. They just feel like nobody's going to love their pet like they do. And they're right. Nobody can love their pet like they do, but we love our career and we love the animals that we care for, or we wouldn't be doing it, because we certainly don't have enough other incentives at this point to really put up with all the crap. So
definitely.
So, answering those questions for the clients and helping them see who you are and your personality and how you talk and how you communicate, and just, how you go over an estimate, how does your app work, and have your doctor sit there and work the app and then have problems with it and try to figure out how to work, just things like that are true human things, not professional, not perfect, not polished, just real.
Totally. I think people fall into the professional trap and they put it's just the really boring and robotic is professional. And I think that is so important to break that down as far as how you want people to see you. And hopefully it would help them to see you as an actual person and not just somebody to take care of their animals and drop off at. So I think that's really good. And I have seen actually several new practices that I've been looking at their social, and they are pretty good at bringing that kind of aspect to it. It seems like it's really, really effective. One thing that I'm interested in your thoughts so I obviously know that practices that have social presences online that are, I think, a lot more authentic and interesting, they have a lot easier time of recruiting doctors to their practice. Mm-hmm. Do you see that as one of the biggest things when it comes to recruiting, or kind of how do you approach that? I guess the question is, when it comes to content, how much of it do you think should be based for the purpose of just engaging with clients, or how much do you think should be kind of trying to set a presence that's going to help to also attract and engage other veterinary professionals? Because I see that as a huge problem, probably for the foreseeable future, with the shortages of vets coming out. And so are you making adjustments for that, or do you have any thoughts on it?
Yes, we have. It's one of those things that, it goes back to that question about the team meeting and the strategy and setting up what we're going to focus on. So you know who you are because you've identified your brand and what's important to your brand message. Now you have these needs for the practice. So what are you going to do to fulfill those needs or try to fulfill those needs, but staying true to your brand message? So if you're looking to hire, then what can you show your target audience, which would be a new veterinarian or a new technician or whoever? What can you show them about you that would answer questions that they may have? So it always goes back to what do they want and what can we provide? If I were a new doctor or a new technician or even a new practice manager, I'd want to make sure that you're not a dumpster fire practice. So show me your team. Show me how they get along. Show me what's going on. Show me how they work together. Show me if it's a mess. I mean, does it look like an absolute train wreck whenever you're done with a procedure? What's the environment like? And that answers a lot of questions because a lot of us that have worked in the industry know we can look and know like, oh, that's chaos. Or, oh, they don't have enough technicians to doctors. They have way too many appointments in there. They've got dogs recovering on the floor. I mean, just all these different things that could be occurring. There could be very great reasons for it. But when we look at it just from a moment, we're making judgments about that stuff. So, sharing the good, sharing the stuff about your practice that's going to answer those questions. So, show the back. It's clean. It's calm. People are walking. They're not running. And, they're caring for the patients and everybody is in good order and everybody looks good. They're not wrinkled and trashy and, hungover from the night before, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's just give them what they would need to make a decision about your practice. And then let people know that there's a need. We're always looking for great team members and show a video of the team doing the Rockettes kick or something fun, or, just let them know who you are and share your brand. But they're going to go to social media and check you out. And that's where social proofing always happens. So I always like for veterinary practices to be present online. Just make sure you're keeping up, because if you haven't posted in 3 years, they're just going to assume you're not there, don't care. They're not going to keep digging. So if you're active and you're showing your team and you're showing them the education and patient care is important, you've at least got one more step ahead in their vetting process of you.
That totally makes sense. I think it's really interesting because of your background, and I'm sure you can kind of just sniff out if a practice is like terrible to work at or not just by the pictures in it. And I'm sure more people can too. And so probably starting out, like you can't fake culture and connection. And so showing people that, right, and starting out with the who you are and then actually having that rather than faking it and trying to curate that is probably the big difference. I was thinking, like I know I was talking to Dr. Cody Krillman today, and he has 8 vets now in his practice that he's hired this year, and he's got another practice opening. He's got a line for vets and techs. Just when can we sign up? And then Michael Shirley, who has been on the podcast a few times, he's also gotten vet hired because his social presence and the culture that he just shows on.
Exactly.
So that's really cool. So that leads me kind of to another question. If you are attracting people kind of based on social and culture fit and things like that, if somebody comes to your practice, and I think this is kind of like a weird area for a lot of practice owners, but what is your take on the doctors in your practice kind of cultivating their own social presence and their own following at the same time? Maybe, there's probably quite a few people listen that are trying to also build their own personal social presence. So what is your thoughts on that and that branding aspect?
I have to say, I feel a little creeped out right now because I'm literally writing that presentation and it's the screen that's open behind this screen.
That's crazy. So that's one thing I was wondering though, because it seems like a pretty difficult conversation, like as far as to navigate. And I don't know what your thoughts. I know what I would do personally, but like, I don't know that would be the best because I've never worked in a practice.
I am pro. Okay. Now I am pro with safeguards and I am pro with expectations and professional relationships and guidelines in place. So I'm still a manager at heart. And so I'm still going to be the one that protects the practice. but I think that the times have changed. There are very few people. I'm one of them. I will never be a one job person.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I got sick, I lost that one job. I lost every bit of my income, and we had to sell our house. We had to leave California. I mean, it was catastrophic in the effects. And only that, I'm sick. So I'm just trying to live, much less, save our family and our financial situation. And from that moment on, it really woke me up to the fact that I will never have just one income again. I just won't be beholden to one employer. Now, I'm very dedicated to my employers when I have them, and I am dedicated to the work that I do with my clients. But I have several sources. And as I've developed this, I wrote some articles on side hustles, and I've really been talking to so many people and so many clients, because my business started with veterinary practices. That's probably, 60% of my business. The other 40% are industry professionals, people who are not veterinary practices, but are in the veterinary industry doing other things. And the premise is the same, but they're building their own brands. They are building their own space, making their own space. They're making online courses. They're writing books. They are becoming influencers in their own right, things like that. They're veterinary consultants. So, yeah, I think if you were to lock down your employees' ability to earn additional income, where their only source to earn is you, and you aren't forthright with reviews and raises and income increases, you're screwing yourself, because there's not going to be very many people that are going to be able or willing to be that restricted. Not only that, there's so many other veterinary practices and organizations that are totally open to it. So if you still have that kind of that mindset, and you're locked into that philosophy, then you may be losing some people. Back in the day, we fought whether or not people could pet sit. That was like the big drama. And that's so mild now, because I know technicians who went and started their own consulting businesses. I know technicians who started their own relief service, and they have an entire company around relief technicians. So, it's not just the pet sitters. It's not just the doctors who can own businesses. Everyone is kind of not, I don't want to say everyone, because it's too broad of a term, but I have this conversation all the time. I had it Monday about, okay, I'm doing this and this. What are some other areas that we can look at generating additional income? Well, are you an affiliate? Are you doing this? And so we brainstorm. So that's happening all the time. And if you are a curmudgeon and you're going to stick them in a hole and not let them out of your practice, they're going to leave.
Totally makes sense, especially when there's so much demand for that. And I'm sure that it comes down to management and communication to make sure that everybody has good expectations and things. But I would just expect that it would have a huge impact. I think positively. Obviously, there's always the worst case scenarios that people think about that can happen, but I would bet that that's very, very few and far between. I can't think of anything, and I know lots of people that are doing just all kinds of things in the industry. I mean, there's just so much potential and opportunity, which is wild. And that's, interesting. You said about 60% are veterinary practices. It's about the same for me too. Like in the space, there's, like any instrument companies, conferences, every kind of potential business opportunity inside this industry too. And I think that's a good benefit for people from an employment standpoint too, if you can also, diversify your income and then have a lot more opportunities. Because I think one thing too is that everybody complains that there's so many outside voices that are giving advice, but they don't want to let the people inside the industry, create their own brands and content and things.
Right. And why? There's so many things now that back in the day, it used to be competition, and I get it. You don't want your associate leaving and going a mile down the road and opening a practice. You don't want your technician having a pet sitting business and you offer boarding. I get those conversations, and even those conversations can have, a win-win on those kinds of topics. but the opportunities are just so diverse that what are the chances they're really going to be competing with you? I mean, you're a veterinary practice. What is it that they're going to be doing that is going to be so harmful or compete on a level that's going to hurt you? It's just not, you risk far greater harm to the emotional well-being of your team and the culture of your team, just ticking them off and not letting them have freedom to be creative and do what they want to do. I just can't. Even on my team, we work in social media and we do this stuff every day for our clients, but we encourage each other like, hey, if you've got an idea and you want to go create your own e-course because you know how to crochet, let's do it, dude. Like, jump out there and do it.
Totally.
If you sell it for $30, that's $30 whole you get. Congratulations, So don't limit yourself to just your little section, your little corner. Nobody can put you in a corner but you.
That's a really good point. So I guess if you could kind of give us some of the things that you think are the major mistakes that you see practices and also individual brands doing right now when it comes to content and branding through content in general, like the biggest problems that you see right now that people could either stop doing or start doing.
Okay, so start doing is be consistent. A lot of times they come out of the gate and they're posting and they've got a schedule and everything's going good and they're getting some traction and they get discouraged because maybe they're not seeing engagement numbers or they're not seeing their vanity numbers, which are their followers and likes increase, because they posted one thing and it didn't go viral. So they're kind of upset. If you don't have consistency, it's the period of time over and over and over that people need to see you. So start being consistent. The thing I would like to stop, and this is probably going to cause a whole bunch of crap, but I would really like to stop seeing so much negativity and personal, political, all of that stuff come out and be played out on business brands. I think that, you do get noticed. I'm not going to lie. You get noticed, but I worry about, and I look at, what are you doing? Who are you alienating? And is that your audience who's actually going to be converting and buying your product or service? It's one thing to be authentic and to be yourself. I am a huge fan of authenticity. I don't do filters. I'll tell you, I'm wearing pajama pants and this is who I am. I post pictures of myself when I'm real, so putting up filters, putting up fake, and then going and getting totally political or ghetto or whatever it is, however you want to describe it, getting too personal. You've got to remember that you are your brand. Your employees are your brand. Everything wraps around your brand. You can't censor what your employees say and do, but you can certainly ask them not to link to your business page. That way they've got freedom to do what they want to do, and they've got safety to do what they want to do without being tied to the practice page. Those are the
I
two
think
things
that's fair. I totally think that's fair to say. Absolutely. If you want to be alienating people, then just, don't link back to where, I think that makes sense. Definitely. I'm sure that there's people who have thoughts on that for sure. I definitely tend to go on the saying nothing side of life, and it's just I think probably to my detriment a little bit. I don't say a lot of things like authentically, right? Trying to curate some kind of like a brand image. That's not necessarily totally true. It's hard and it takes practice and probably baby steps to get used to things. But I think that's some really practical and helpful advice.
We have freedom of speech. Yeah. On social media, it is not protected. That's a private corporations own those social media platforms. So it's not a public platform where your freedom of speech is protected. But we do have the freedom to say what we want to say. You're never free of the consequences, though. That's what people forget. They think that those freedoms are protected from consequence. Nope. You're just allowed to walk in there and say something dumb. That's allowed. Now, what you're going to have to pay in the end for that statement, who knows? I mean, we're hearing from people in the news all the time that said one word 20 years ago, and it's coming back to bite them. And we're not taking into account the culture and all of the things that went into play. I would hate to be held accountable for things I said, as a fourth grader. I mean,
Absolutely.
Could you imagine? So
yeah, I wouldn't. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's what people seem to forget, is that it is. And if you think about it from a branding perspective, this is the thing that when I talk to people and I coach people, you are your own brand, your career, everything you do, every skill set you bring, every post you put on social media, everything about you is your brand. You have a dollar sign that floats above your head, and your value is based on that whole picture of who you are as a person. And your dollar sign is affected by that. So if they can go and do research on you and find that you are hot-headed and you argue and you fight and you are basically, you troll people just to go after them, do you think they're going to hire you? Do you think that you're going to be a marketable commodity for their practice or for whatever it is that they're wanting to do? Now, maybe if they want to stick you on a podcast or stick you in a speaking event or something like that, sure. But if you're looking for a profession and you're looking to be taken seriously, potential employers will go looking. Or we're so small that our names, we all know each other. So you'll know who Rhonda is. You'll know who a lot of these names are pretty quick. And if not, people will fill you in. So what are they going to say based on what they know and what their exposure to you is? So you're a walking, talking resume. And you got to remember that too. You are your own brand.
Yeah, absolutely. At least take that into consideration. And the pendulum always swings, right? Like there's always, right? So like it could be what you say today may be working, but 5 years, who knows, right? The world's changed 180 degrees in the past 5 years. It's wild how much things change. So that's, I think, really good points. So for people who want to connect with you and work with you, what kind of brands and practices do you work with, and what does that look like typically?
Well, we kind of have two different arms of dog days. So we're two-legged dog days. We work with veterinary practices who we manage their social media. We help them. Together we work and we create an editorial calendar. We identify what their brand is, who they are, the look that they want to go for, the colors that they want to use. And so we create the social media that looks like them. And so we log in as them. We are them. It's not cookie cutter. And so every single one of our clients has something different. We may all talk about Sunglasses Day, but every single post, every single thing will relate to Sunglasses Day in a different way for each client. So I don't like cookie cutter. I as a practice manager, I used to always notice because I would totally stalk my competitors, and everyone had the same social media because the one sales guy from that particular company would go down the street and get everybody. So everybody looked the same. So you didn't stand out to anyone. So I knew that whenever I got serious about this business, that I was like, no, I want everyone to be custom. How are you going to have a brand if you look like everybody else? It just doesn't connect. So doing that for the veterinary side, and then the industry partner side is people that are working in the veterinary industry. We have financial advisors, we have practice consultants, we have veterinary influencers, we have conferences, we have games, we have some different types of like urgent care companies, that kind of thing. It's a lot of fun, and it varies quite a bit. And that's what makes it really exciting, because we are brand managers for them. So we come up with all kinds of hairy stuff that, we get into. Like, we just created a shopping guide for one of our clients and shared it out and linked it to their Amazon affiliate account. And so, we were celebrating because they sold 9 things over the Black Friday weekend and, earned like $3 whole. And
that's really cool.
Yeah. But it's like, holy cow, we did that.
I earned 27 cents over the weekend on an affiliate link. So there you go.
There you go. It's just another source, and it's just always looking for another opportunity, and getting to do that for our clients is a whole lot of fun. It's just really cool to think about, like, man, okay, what kind of crap can we get into today? Like, let's do this. So that's what it is. And basically people reach out to me on LinkedIn, or they reach out to me on our website, just dogdaysconsulting.com. And you can email me, Rhonda at dogdaysconsulting.com, and I answer. It's me, and I have a small team, but we are mighty, and we just kind of get stuff done.
Very cool. Well, I really, really appreciate all your insights today and everything you shared with us. So thank you so much. And definitely have to have you on again someday in the future here. But thank you so much.
This was a lot of fun.
All right. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Again, if you need help with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. But we'll see you on the next episode, and have a wonderful day.